Hey nerds, we're talking about Star Trek Picard, episode 308, Surrender. We're going to review the episode and then get into a spoiler breakdown of the episode, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Soul Show. I'm Nathan.
I'm David.
And I'm Khandra.
Hey, so this week, the spoiler-free logline for this episode is Vadic forces Picard to make an impossible choice, deliver what he can never give, or watch his crew perish. Their only salvation lies in the mind of an old friend and old foe. This is written by Deborah Kampmeier and directed by Matt Okumura. So, David, what did you think of this episode?
I enjoyed this a lot. It gets to a lot of some straight dialogue right there, gets straight to the point, doesn't drag on, something like that, but keep doing the suspense at the same time. And there's a lot of nostalgia that makes me feel like gives me back the TNG vibes when I was a kid, so it's really nice to see that. But the thing is, I'm a little frustrated is that there are a couple of things that frustrate me that wants answers right away, but that's the whole thing with the show, is keeping them suspense. But the thing is, it's dragging so long, especially with a couple of the characters. So all in all, I really liked it. I enjoyed this episode, especially from the middle towards the end, was what I like most. So I really like this one.
Khandra, what do you think?
Yeah, I also enjoyed the episode. I think they did a good job here of making you feel the tension and fear that the bridge crew was going through. As you see where Vadic in the last episode took control of the bridge, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty around that, about what's going to happen next. And to see the whole TNG crew together at this point was just really enjoyable, even though it's not under the best circumstances. But this was I think, to David's point, the last half of the episode was certainly action-packed and left us wondering, what next? We've solved one problem, but immediately recognize that there's still a much bigger problem on the horizon.
Yeah, I like this episode as well. I actually watched this on last Saturday when Paramount gave us the two episodes. I watched them back to back. I was a little lower on this the first time I watched it, but I'm starting to come around to it now that we had to prepare for recording. I really like how it ends. I think that one of the issues that I had in the previous episode, and if you haven't watched that, there's a link up there for a review from last week. One of the issues that I had with last week's episode, even though I rated it really high, was stuff to do with Geordi, and I think it's handled a little bit better in this episode. There is some really great stuff with Data or Brett Spiner as well, even independent from Geordi. Yeah, I'm trying to dance around spoiler stuff that isn't in the log line. Yeah, and Vadic is still chewing the scenery. That stuff is great as well. I had this a little bit lower just because, as I said, I watched it back to back last weekend, and the end of the last episode ended dark, and the beginning of this episode is super dark. We were talking about this before we came on. I think that things happen in space and they're at war, so some dark things might happen. I'm coming around on how I feel about it based upon the conversation that we had before. Anyway, so how would you guys rate this? So David, how would you rate this?
I'll give it a solid 8.
Okay.
I'm at 8.5.
You guys are around the road trip place. Yeah, I think I'm at 8 as well. I think I would notch it down from last week, but not too terribly much. So I think I gave last week a movie marathon. I don't think I could watch this over and over again like I did last week. It's just the Vadic dialogue in the middle of last week where she was talking about what happened in section 31. I could rewatch that part. There is something in the middle of this episode that I could rewatch. So it's on the edge for me. I can see why you kind of say 8.5, but yeah, I try to keep round numbers like my rating. So if I can't give it a 9, I'm probably gonna give it an 8. So I guess we're all around road trips this week. So yeah, anyway, like I said, I was dancing around specifics because we had to talk about it. We have to talk about it. So if you enjoyed the conversation, please share, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And with that, spoilers ahead. All right, so this episode starts where the last episode ended. Vadic took over the ship, and she's giving Jack an ultimatum to come to the bridge. She's cut off the lights on the ship. She's cut off communication so they can't communicate with each other. She's having her men corral people. And actually, I have forgotten that we actually have screenshots of this. She's having her men corral people. And she basically tells Jack to come to the bridge or she's going to start killing the officers on the bridge. So that's how the episode begins. And also there's a bit of back and forth between the sickbay and the EPS portion of the ship where Alondra, Geordi, and the Gullum at this point is as well. And they're both trying to get control of the ship, and to no avail. Yeah, we also see here Jack using his powers like we saw in the last episode to look through this crewman's eyes, and he gets killed. So that's how we start off the beginning of the episode, and that's the teaser.
This really sets the stage because we've seen Vadic be brutal before. She threw a ship at their ship, right? She obviously does not care about
she doesn't care
the lives of the
about
crew.
solids in general. Yeah,
and to see it this way, and I think the way they did it, because you heard them. You didn't see what happened, but you heard the scream and the shooting, and then you heard silence.
You definitely heard it,
and
but
that-
you also, through his eyes, you also saw a bunch of dead people as well when he was like, what?
Yeah, you saw the aftermath, but yeah, hearing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty chilling.
Yeah, it was in very dark way to start the episode, but it gets darker than this later on in the episode.
Yeah, it started really dark, and when she gave with Vadic, I was saying, first let's cut their eyes, let's cut their ear, which is basically cut the comms, cut the securities,
Yeah.
so that way, basically, the whole group will be blind. And while the distributors didn't take over, they have no way Picard and his crew can have access to anything. And Jack is becoming, I wouldn't say paranoid, but she's very concerned of what's going on, and if he still doesn't know why they want him. And later on, he explained to his parents, saying, "I'm not a changeling at all." Even Billy knows himself. But Jack confirms that something is wrong with. There's something inside me. I don't know, can explain what. And we have some suspicions of what is influencing Jack, since there's been articles that say Jack is a changeling, which is not true. And we got confirmation in the last episode that Vadic is a changeling herself, and experimented by Secretary 1.
So yeah, that's how the teaser ends, and then we begin Act 1.
So basically, we start off at the scene where Riker and Deanna Troi are talking about what happened, what's going on, and they talk how Deanna Troi was captured, and when she knows already that something's not right at all. And Riker is like, even though things seem to be falling apart, Jean-Luc Picard has a plan in mind and have Vadic trapped. So even though they themselves, that they're coming in blind, don't know what's going on, there's no communication with them, which led to the next scene where Vadic is waiting for Jack to show up while we initiate the threat to kill every crew member there, while Seven and Shaw discuss about how things should work and what they should do.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you guys felt about the issue between the two of them. Like, I think it was on Shaw's side throughout this entire episode, and she was a little bit too emotional or attached. I don't know how you guys felt about their back and forth and their disagreement.
Well, Shaw is by the books kind of guy. Well, Seven is like by her gut in a way, but she has a lot of experience with these kind of things because she was a Borg and stuff like that. Well, Shaw, like he said himself in the previous episode, he's just an engineer guy. So, but Seven has a plan in mind, while Shaw just stand there and everything and figure out by the book kind of guy.
Well, I think it's also about like not wanting to, because he wanted her to basically kill him, and she didn't see a need for that yet. I don't doubt that Seven would, if she thought it really like there was no other way. And so I think it's like, I guess they disagree about when you make that sacrifice or when you leave behind.
Yeah.
And turns out, I guess she was right. I don't know. I feel like he also retreating a little bit into the Shaw that we started off the show with. Like he grew a little bit. He seemed a little bit more courageous in later episodes. And I think now I feel like he's retreated a little bit back into who the asshole.
Would you really say that
himself.
You should have killed me as cowardly? I think you should have killed me as in cowardly. I think he's courageous.
I think cowardly. I just think it's like a difference of does it matter? Like even if he had done it then, maybe the problem would have been solved. I don't know.
Taken over bridge and the ship. I think he has a valid point. We could talk about this more as the episode progresses, but I think that he has a valid point here. Sorry, go ahead.
It takes a lot to kill them. Like, it's not just a one-shot deal. He made that mistake in the last episode by not like double tapping the one hand.
Yeah, but what he specifically said is that she should have cut the lift, is what he said to her. So they wouldn't have been able to get up there unless they like oozed through the walls and they could put up a confinement field. So yeah, anyway, I was just wondering about your thoughts about, because that was not the main plot of the thing, but they kept coming back to it because they kept bickering at each other about it a little bit. So anyway, anything else in the scene?
Well, there's this.
So Vadic is really trying to push her promise and talking to the crew tie in everything and trying to draw them out. And next scenes where like Geordi and her daughter is trying to figure out a plan and to try to take back the ship, even though they were locked out. Now the next scene there, we get to fast forward a little bit, we get to the sick bay where Jack is explaining to Picard and Beverly what's going on with him, and he talk about his abilities as he somehow can see and control their minds. And Sydney confirmed with that he can do it, even though Beverly and Picard still cannot understand why, but Jack feels that he can somehow infiltrate one of the minds of the crew. So which led to the next scene where he could somehow control like one of the crew members who was sneak his hand to enter the Captain Picard's authorization code. Seven picked it up too from afar, but unfortunately Vadic noticed it and grabbed it just in time before the lieutenant entered the last key code. And then Vadic notices that Jack is controlling the guy, which led to questioning him about if Jack's really there or is she really talking to the crew member. And then she leveled her threat to kill one of the crew members, which is when she started going around playing almost like Duck Duck Goose and then zap. And then right when we thought she's gonna kill one member, all of a sudden she zapped the Vulcan comms specialist, unfortunately, which caught me off guard. So I was like, I did not see that happening. So
yeah, she kills the science officer. The comms person is Eisner. Yeah, it's shocking. But I think this also goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the Seven. So when she's interrogating Murrah here, and Murrah talks about his son, and she asks him specifically, "Oh, Picard has a son. Tell him to come up." He says no because I'm Starfleet. And then she looks directly at Seven and says, that's control. So that's why she doesn't kill him. That was what I was talking about. Like, I get where Shaw's coming from. Not acting like a Starfleet officer. She's letting her emotions like dictate her a little bit too much. Which the other thing that Shaw says earlier is that there are consequences. Everything can't be hunky-dory. And there are consequences that you haven't seen yet. And the consequences that we haven't seen yet is that Tavine gets killed. So that's what I was saying. I don't know that she was vindicated because Tavine is dead and they wouldn't have taken over the ship.
Yeah, I don't think it's as easy to kill Vadic, right? So I think it would have been a useless sacrifice, essentially. Because she's gotten away before and other changelings have. So I guess that's where Seven's coming from. Like, unless you have a really hard and fast plan to kill her, it's not going to happen. But I see your point. It's funny, like David, you said Duck Goose, right? Like, that really does make a game out of this. Like, it's very twisted, very sick, and you're like going through all of these emotions. And then at the last minute, she also says, I will show you control. You know, you want to see what control looks like, because she has everybody thinking she's going to kill the comms officer, and then she switches it up. So they understand that she's going to be unpredictable to anybody.
Yeah, she wasn't even talking to Tavine. She just happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she toyed with Mura, right? Like, tell me about your son. And he makes this like really brave showing because I'm Starfleet. And she's like, that doesn't matter. Like, anybody could get this phaser. So
yeah. And that's the end of Act 1.
Yeah. So for the next act, we go back to the Shrike and we get some really tense moments between Troy and Riker. And I think understand a little bit more about what created the distance between them. And they have, I think, a moment of bonding, right? So they talk through some of their problems and we realize that Deanna had basically tried to ease her grief for him. And he really struggled or had a problem with her doing that. And I feel like, for me, this always reminds me, and even with Jack, I feel like Star Trek, this, I don't know, it's like a slight tangent, but people entering other people's minds and bodies to do things without consent.
It definitely happened a lot to her, which is ironic.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes out that he says she accused her of pushing into his head to dull the pain, like, that's a huge violation. And she says she does it because she wants him to heal faster, right? She wants to get him to get to the end. So I remember maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, or maybe before, when they got out of the nebula, you were disappointed in the explanation, or there was like confusion about the state of their relationship. And I thought this was them trying to make that clearer. I don't know that they did.
If that's an ask of whether or not this makes that better, I think it makes it better. It doesn't necessarily make it great. I think also, I alluded to earlier on, we'll get a fix for my issue with Geordi's conversation with Data later on in this episode as well, but I think it still makes it choppy. That episode, it still is weird. This still doesn't answer all the questions that I have about why he ran away. It answers some of them, though. My main concern was that it looked like they were, if they're telling me it looked like they were fine because she was taking away his ability to actually emote, then okay, I guess that explains why it looked like they were fine. Like, she was carrying the load of the entire family so that she didn't have to, I guess it was selfless, but it also a little bit selfish, so she didn't have to feel everyone's pain as long because she was feeling everyone's pain. So she was trying to lessen their pain so she didn't have to feel as much. There's also that. Yeah. It almost makes it clearer and also makes it messier, because I don't know if I would have taken her apology or forgiven her so quickly. I understand. It's not like I'm not saying that he shouldn't love her anymore, but she took away his free will. And I think that needs to be examined a little bit more than it is in the scene for him. They are being tortured. So maybe they think they're going to die. So that you can add that. So it's like holding on to a grudge if you think you're going to die is stupid. So maybe that's why he's forgiven her. So anyway.
And then they get rescued, right? A henchman comes to torture them and gets stabbed from behind by Worf. And to his credit, Worf makes sure that the job is done. And I really love this moment where he meets Deanna and just like this outpouring. I've been working so hard to improve myself and I've been thinking of you and all of this. And it's just like this awkwardness because Troy and Worf have a relationship for a while.
And I think that's what would have left it if he didn't show up on DS9 and he got with Jadzia. I think that they made the decision to actually put Riker with Deanna only because Worf shows up in DS9. But if that doesn't happen, you could go either way with that. Deanna could have ended up with Worf.
With Worf. Yeah, I really felt like Worf was saying,
second marriage, no.
We can make this work.
So and Riker's to him here, it's like this, he says inappropriate. He's like, is this a rescue or is this more torture? It's very funny. Yeah.
More torture. And so we go back to the Titan. And it's also like funny because they assume that Picard has everything under control right on the Titan, and they really don't. But back there, Sydney realizes that they need a lot more computing power to regain control of your ship, and that really translates into activating the golem that Data and Lore and before and Soon, right? So, and there's resistance to that because Geordi tells them, like, you remove this partition, Lore will take over. And of course they're hopeful that won't happen. And you see the struggle between Data and Lore once they remove the partition, and Data starts to access his memories. They show up in the form of trinkets. Lore takes these trinkets, and you think that Lore has won, right? We see Data start to disintegrate. So I guess like this whole scene, I think again really just speaks to Spiner's talent, and like you see the difference between Data and Lore, how they speak, their mannerisms, and the struggle. Do you like, what did this give you?
This whole, the beginning of this is actually pretty funny. Like when Picard comes in with Geordi, and Geordi is like, you gave me a gift, and he said it was a bottle of wine from Chateau Picard, and you said it was dry because Tastes of
Basically
wine.
saying this
It's
wine
pedestrian at
Taste
best.
their pastry.
And then Jordy turns to Alondra and said, yeah, that's Picard. Just like, that was hilarious. The way it just began, the beginning of the scene. But yeah, the beginning of the fight between Lore and Data is also really interesting. And this is like the most Easter egg centric like reference part of this episode, because you get all these things from Data's life. We start with the memory of Jordy and him in the holodeck, and you hear Jordy and Data's voice from that episode when they were in the holodeck with the Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, beginning of this is really cool. And then as it progresses, the battle between the two of them. And also, it's funny the way that Data is looking at this. He's actually taking in what Lore's saying. He's saying that Lore's saying that you were given all these things and I had nothing after deactivated, and I have all this resentment. So I think he actually is trying to give him memories from his life. It's just the way that he decided to interact with him is from the place that he understands and that resonates with him. Whereas Lore is far more aggressive. That doesn't work out for him.
No, you're pretty much spot on. I've always seen the battles between Lore and Data, and this scene here is basically the battle of the minds, basically between two of the well-known androids, and that we see like Data seem to be surrendering himself to Lore, hence that he's given all the trinkets of his memories. So pretty much you laid out everything out there between the dialogue between Data and Lore.
Yeah, and then back on the Shrike, Riker, Worf, and Deanna join Raffi. They have found Picard's body, and they figured out the changelings took portions of Picard's parietal lobe that were infected with Ironic syndrome. They get the information that they need and make a quick escape. Well, they, I guess at this point, discover that the comms are down on the Titan, but they have to leave. And while this has been going on, Jack has gone up to the bridge to buy them some time while they are hoping that Data wins the battle and is able to return control of the ship systems to them. And so all of that is happening in the background, and right at the end of this act, Jack make it to the bridge to face off with Vadic.
Act 3 begins with a continuation of the battle between Data and Lore in his head. From the outside, they think that he's losing because that's what the handy visual representation that they decided to put together, which seems overly simplistic, but I guess overly simplistic for made-up science is fine. Lore is the red, he's the blue, and the red is overcoming the blue because he's going at it in a very direct way, whereas Data is going at it in a unorthodox way, similar to the way he won Strategino against that guy. Remember, he wasn't trying to win, he was just trying to stalemate. So he just thought about the problem in a different way than Lore did. And it looks like, and even from the outside looking in, it looks like he's surrendering. And Picard even mentions that it looks like surrendering. He's giving him this thing of Yar, what he saw in Measure of a Man. Yar, of course, died in the first season. I mean, he had a special relationship with her, as they mentioned in Measure of a Man. So another little Easter egg there. And we're back on the bridge, and he's basically stalling here. So this conversation between her and him is interesting in that she seems to like dance around who he is, and he says to her, I think at some point, whenever you're ready to stop talking about your circles and just like get to who I am, and who, like, she does mention the door here as well, but it seems like she definitely has a lot of information about who he is or what he is, but it's unclear because she's not being clear. And then they clear the bridge, and then Seven comes back up. Again, this didn't necessarily work for me. I don't know what she did besides just stand next to Jack at the end of this episode, like, and possibly sacrifice herself, but like, I don't know why she made that decision. She says to Shaw that I'm taking the consequences. I guess at this point she doesn't know what's going to happen. Maybe Shaw thinks that she's going to get blown up, and then she thinks she's going to be blown up as well, because that's what Jack says the thing is, a bomb. But I don't understand why she thinks her presence there would help the situation. Did you understand?
I think it's just the uncertainty, because so I thought this moment was interesting because it looked like power was shifting throughout the conversation. There had moments of confidence, but also like flashes of uncertainty, and Jack was the same. Like when he was telling her like stop dancing around stuff, he was very like sure of himself, and when she would counter with a little bit of information about him, you could see. And so there was this battle, because for her, I mean, she also realizes that he says early on, like, this might not kill you, but it will for sure kill me. So she doesn't want him to die. And he knows that she wants him alive. So there's like, everybody is, I guess, trying to be on their best behavior
they
like,
understand the stalemate, and they're going back. So they're, I mean, to him, he's stalling. So it's fine that she's acquiescing to him to a certain point, but like to her, from her point of view, she doesn't want him to blow himself up. So yeah, it's a bit of a stalemate.
And it felt like it was like an objective, like if Jack had slipped for a moment and Vadic had gotten control, like she would at least be in the mix. Because there were definitely moments where I thought like he let Vadic get too close to him. And I was like, oh, this might not go the way we want it to go.
Yeah, because he wants to know who he is. So some of the things that she's saying is hooking it. So that's true.
Kind of nailed it. So it's good that Seven is being who she is, taking the matters in her own hands for the safety of her crew. Because back in Voyager, she always used to think for herself and what's the best path and not think of the consequences. She now knows the consequences, especially as a commander. So that's why she's willing to step in for the crew and everything and save the captain. But at the same time, Jack literally wants to get an answer, even though Vadic is trying to stall too, because she thinks she can lure him into her side.
Yeah, and then, this is actually when she mentions the door, and he starts to think about the door, and then like Seven is like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess from here we jump back to the battle between Lore and Data. So after the action on the bridge here. So yeah, another Easter egg / reference. All their poker games. He said this represents the many poker games I had with my friends. And then Lore actually, he's starting to question it, but he doesn't question enough because he's like, what? It's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, because, you had nothing and I'm going away and then I just want to give these to you. Yeah. And then we have Spot here. And he says in a way that Spot taught me how to love, which is awesome because he didn't technically have the ability to love, but he did care for Spot. He learned how to care for someone through Spot. And of course, that's a major reference from the show. What do you think about this whole battle, this back and forth and them losing hope? Geordi actually crying here and saying that he's gone, and then the reveal that Data's back.
The thing is that as Lore is very cocky, he always believed he is just the superior android compared to B4 and Data. Well, Data, Lore always keep trying to point out the Data that you're inferior to me. There's no way you can beat me. We've seen Data many times. It's not the first time Data changed the game, so I'm really surprised about that. It's surprised, but also happy that this is the Data I remember.
Yeah, I was wondering how they were going to handle, integrating, because you knew, once they realized that it was carrying multiple personalities, essentially, at some point there was going to have to be some sort of
which is what Lore wanted.
Yeah, I was curious about how they were going to handle it, and I think this was satisfying. I don't know how I would have felt if, let's say, Lore had won, or that that personality really broke out and then either runs off and does its own thing or has some radical change of heart. That I think would have felt cornier. But I think what they wound up doing, because what happens is you don't get Data or Lore, right? It's this is a different Data, and you can see that sort of, and you can, in the way he communicates.
He found a separate solution. If they were fighting against each other, as Geordi said before he took down the partition, he was like, Data, his ethical subroutines would never allow him to kill someone, but he's found another solution. Exactly. Instead of destroying his brother, he merged with his brother. So before he gets out of that space, that mind space, he says, you are me, we are me. They merged together before Data and Lore, and I guess soon to a certain extent as well. Apparently they were just files. But yeah, I think this was pretty satisfying to me. I think this is a good resolution to merging them. And this also resolves for me, for the most part, one of the issues that I had with bringing back Data. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I said that they can't keep killing this guy. Yeah. It lessens his death. So after this is a different person, fine. They also need to say that Data died in action and he's a hero for dying in action. This person can't come back and have the same rank as Data, because Data died. He grew himself up on the scimitar. That's how Commander Data died. This person can go on as a different person, but he can't. I think it would cheapen his sacrifice if he can just pick up as Commander Data. I think it would be poor writing for him to want to pick up and be Commander Data in Starfleet, because you've merged all these personalities. His desires and what he wants out of the world is going to be different, because Lore is mixed in there with Soong and everything else. So I don't know, maybe he'll become a scientist like he did in All Good Things. He was he had the Darwin chair at Oxford or something like that, I think. So yeah. So he takes over the ship and he starts the monologue about her monologuing protoplasm, and then Rafi boards the ship. Before that, Riker in the shuttle connects with Sydney, and Sydney basically gives them the skinny, and then Rafi has this corridor fight. So she sends some of her goons after Rafi, and then we find out that this is not a bomb; it's a portable force field. And then Picard gives the command to open up the bridge, and she says it's effing solids before she flies out into space. So they definitely butchered them, because we've seen in previous episodes of DS9 that Jason can fly in space. She could change quickly enough to a space creature. We saw, I forget his name, in the episode, the guy who visited, he was a space creature.
Yeah, one of the lost one. Yeah. No, that's when I saw this, that immediately, because I think we talked early on, when they discovered or started to realize that the changelings were different and how different they were, that there could be consequences for that. And we see that here, right, where a normal changeling would have been able to survive in space. Yeah. No problem.
Because mimicking humans too closely. They have all the organs that can freeze when exposed to space. So this is the end of that, unfortunately. I actually would have liked to seen her go on a little bit more. I don't know if there's any redeeming her, or if she was ever going to forgive the Federation. I don't know. They tortured her. I don't think she's forgiven them.
But she's also only one of...
We saw it last week that Tuvok is the guy who's opposing his Tuvok. So there are a bunch of them still out there. This doesn't solve the problem. She gave this ability to a bunch of people, but she's gone, and they blew up the the Shrike. After this, he gives the ship back to Shaw, and then Shaw tells her to take point in destroying the Shrike. And Okumura says, with pleasure, given how she psychologically tortured him earlier in the episode. And that's the end of the third act of this episode.
So basically, after the destruction of the Shrike, Worf came out to clean out the mess and everything to be sure that other changing minions will come back. And then he met her with Rafi to congratulate her on the well job well done. And then
it also criticized her a little bit.
Her ability to fight. And so she's like, what the heck? No, she can kick ass and everything. But then all of a sudden, at the end of Troy had this sudden aura hit her and everything because she felt some darkness is going on in the ship. And then we led back to the other half of the crew where they talked with Data as returned. This just feels like I'm watching Robert Williams, the bicentennial movie, when he talks about I feel very different after all the changes I've been through and everything. And then he somehow did his nod, signature tilt and everything, and he cracked his neck. He's like, oh, that's new.
I didn't even catch that. I didn't even catch that. It was him doing his head tilt, and because he's old, so that was something I just thought it was them showing that he's old, but he was trying to do his head tilt, and he cracked his neck. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious, and he's like, he feels very satisfied because we know way back in TNJ that his dream is to feel more human. Which later on he had a talk with Geordi when they fixed everything that Vadic has infected, and discussed with Geordi about his experience so far of being human and everything, that even Joy notices that he did some a contraction while at the same time pulling a joke with no problem. And then Joy even asked him how do you? And then do it. And this is a dream of Data. Well, dream. Let's say Data said, I feel Joy congratulated him saying, well, you feel as much as you like. And then while at the same time it ended really nice of reminding everyone of the true friendship of Joy and Data throughout the years and back in TNG and everything. Hence that Data said that the only thing that never changes is my gratitude for your friendship. And then which led to the next scene of them reuniting at the ready room in the Titan. And everyone was so happy to see Data back alive again. Picard asked him, I know that you want to experience to be dead, but he felt that he betrayed his wish by bringing him back. But Data said, that was me, as in probably another version. But this one says that I'd rather be with you guys than be dead and everything. Which led to the discussion, which led to everyone feeling so glad to be united again and such. And which led to them getting straight to the point is basically changing has betrayed Starfleet. While at the same time, Riker reported that they're still trying to find Data why they want to steal the Picard's original body and all of that they dissect from his brain. Well, Deanna pointed out saying there's something tied to this to Jack, and that's when it led, and she has to talk to him immediately because they had to find out what's going on while Jack himself wants to know.
A couple observations. So like I said, I had an issue with the last episode because of the thing that they had with Geordi. I feel like it didn't land as well as it should have, given how invested I am in Geordi and Data's relationship. I think they robbed us of him at least being there in the first season when Data died, gave that story to Picard for some reason. So I'm glad that they acknowledged how deep their friendship is in that scene. And then in this scene, I like this scene. You see them all around the table, but it also made a little bit no sense. Why are they in the ready room and the captain of the ship not in the ready room? They're taking over the ready room and doing a debrief on the thing, and they're just not there. I understand that they did it because they wanted to give us the nostalgic TNG, this is the cast or their crew around the table. John in 7 should have been there. I don't know what you guys thought about those two scenes. That's what I thought about those two scenes.
I mean, it honestly didn't register for me, but I also feel like Shaw, to an extent, was, I wouldn't say okay, I think okay seating command, I think he recognizes that this is above his pay grade, especially given that there's something really specific about Picard and Jack.
I mean, it's above his pay grade, but he's a captain, so it might be above his pay grade after there were a bunch of admirals meeting, but there's a bunch of people who are below his pay grade meeting in this meeting.
But with the an admiral,
true, so. But it's like I said, it's not an admiral meeting. I don't know. It was just a little weird to me. I just chuckled to myself when I saw it. It was this is obviously a setup. It's a little contrived. It was obviously a contrived thing that the showrunners decided to do because they wanted to give us one last shot of the original crew around the table, but their absence was not just his absence, but the absence of the two ranking officers was a little weird to me anyway. But yeah, I'm not sure how you guys felt about the Geordi Data thing, but that was how I felt about it. Like I said, it made it better for me. It made up for him not being there in season 1.
So basically, we get to the scene where Deanna meets Jack and discuss about all these visions of what's been happening to him. And then Deanna basically entered his mind so he can find out what is going on and what exactly this dream about. Well, she discusses with him of what is he seeing. Jack telling her about a red door and a red being. There's something's talking in the voices, either both woman and man, even though they don't know what it is. That door is like a reference. But the end of the day telling her we should walk to the door, but Jack says no because he's afraid what's behind it, which is a reference to Card of his past, because he too has a locked door in his past as well, which is in his case the memory of his mother. But in this case here, this is Jack's own door. So, but then that's where we black off right there, because that's when right when they opened the door and the keyhole started glowing, the screen blacked out and said Jack. Yeah. Creepy voice.
Yeah, really creepy voice.
You know what? You also picked up another thing that I neglected. Like, that's the end of the episode, but I tried to block out a lot of season 2, but you're right. Picard had a door as well that he didn't want to go through. Yeah, so I guess that was them trying to connect it to season 2. But yeah, that was definitely a good part of season 2 of Picard. So after watching this episode, what do you think is going on with Jack? Like, first of all, they can't drag this out anymore. There's been too many episodes where we don't know what's going on with him. We got to get an answer at the beginning of the next episode of what's going on with Jack. There are a bunch of theories going on online. What do you guys think?
My guess is that this is like the next 2 episodes with the 2-in-1 episode. There's a finale there, because I don't think my gut feeling show is the one to keep us in suspense any longer. So I think next week and put both episodes together. So I think we'll find out, hopefully at the very beginning of the next episode, we'll find out what the heck is going on with Jack and who was behind the whole time and everything. We have some theories of who it might be. Like we discussed earlier, it could be this particular entity from DS9, and also we can find out what is the true plan of Frontier Day. Even though we already know the changes in Starfleet, but we know what is their end game, and their end game is related to Frontier Day, and Jack just happened to be the key part of it though. But now that Vadic is dead, if we figure out what's gonna happen next. So
yeah, I think what Troy said in the ready room is somewhat telling. Rick said there's darkness with it, like it's not, which says to me that it's not something that could be removed from him without killing him, and there's an ancient voice that isn't his, and I don't know like how that connects, but I guess at least hope that the solution is not one where Jack is killed. Like there's something that can be separated from him, that is, and then also thinking back to what Vadic said to Beverly, that he wasn't meant for her. Like, so I mean, I think like Jack is also like some sort of Section 31 experiment gone awry. Or his experiment gone awry. Like he wound up where he shouldn't, someplace he shouldn't have been. So yeah, it needs to be. Well, it's gonna be resolved.
This episode ends. If they do it the way that they ended the episode, we ended the last episode with Vadic on the bridge, and they began this episode with Vadic on the bridge. So hopefully it just goes into what's behind the door when we find out. There's a lot of speculation that this is the Paw Wraiths because of the red eyes, and I was actually talking to Colin about this earlier when we were recording for The Mandalorian, and he's a little off put by the fact that they keep stealing all this DS9 stuff. I'm not sure how other people would feel about that if it ends up being the Paw Wraiths. Like, it's all one galaxy. All this stuff happened around the same time. Technically speaking, the Enterprise would have been part of the Dominion War. We actually get references to the Dominion War in First Contact, because when Worf joins the crew in First Contact, he's joining them from the Defiant, and the Defiant was created for the Dominion War. So all this in the same galaxy. Right. So I don't know how, if it ends up being one of the Paw Wraiths. Like, the clues about it being ancient, it being evil, like that. Yeah. So if it ends up being the Paw Wraiths, you guys think about that development, if that's who it is.
I feel like we talked about the Paw Wraiths before, and I don't really have favorable things to say about like that whole like just bothered me, like space gods especially, like just taking people's bodies, and but it makes sense. It does, because could it be like what makes sense, but within the Star Trek, right? It could be within the Star Trek universe, that would certainly make a whole lot of sense.
All right. Well, that is what we think, but we want to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below, share, like, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Check out our last review, or check out one of our reviews of The Mandalorian. All right, guys. Bye. Thanks.